Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and final session of the 2020 Pathways to Law Conference. Thank you for joining us. My name is Pamela Chong, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Community Services Committee of the Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area. The purpose of this conference is to provide you with advice and insights from Asian American and Pacific Islander attorneys and law students. Today, we have the Law Students panel, which features students who either have just graduated or will be entering their third years of law school. I'm excited to introduce you to our moderator, Stephen Chong. He obtained his BA from UC Davis and his JD from the University of San Francisco. Stephen is a member of the Board of Directors of the Asian American Bar Association and the principal attorney of the Law Office of Stephen Chong, a firm in Alameda that focuses on wills and trusts, probate court, and juvenile dependency court. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Stephen.
Thank you for the introduction, Pam. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. I'm excited to moderate today's law student panel, and we have three exceptional students who are ready to share their experiences with you. So let me introduce them. First up, we have Evelyn Nguyen. She has finished her second year at UC Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco. She serves as the president of the Vietnamese American Law Society and was recently selected to join the 2020 Executive Board of the Hastings Law Journal as next year's Executive Symposium editor. Prior to law school, Evelyn lived in Washington, D.C. for 6 years, and she is a first-generation Vietnamese immigrant who grew up in Texas, where she attended her undergrad and earned her Bachelor of Arts in Medical Humanities, and later earned her Master of Public Health degree in Community Health Promotion, also from Baylor. Welcome, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Next, we have Bonifacio Sison. Bonifacio has an interesting background and a path to get to where he is today. He was born in the Philippines and immigrated to the United States when he was 5, where he grew up in Daly City. He attended Westmore High School and joined the Marine Corps afterwards. Later, he started his higher education at College of San Mateo and finished at UC Berkeley, where he majored in political science. And while in law school, where he attended UC Berkeley School of Law, he served as co-chair of the Filipino American Law Society and the Military and Veterans at Berkeley Law. He also was a participant on the moot court team, which is law school's version of practice for becoming a trial advocate. Welcome, Bonifacio. Finally, we have Christy Leigh. She is finishing her second year at Texas A&M University School of Law in Fort Worth, Texas. She is concentrating on intellectual property. She currently serves as the president of the Asian and Pacific Islander Law Student Association and is also the social chair of the Student Bar Association. She's also a member of the Texas A&M Law Review. So for those in the audience, for law school, that's a very big deal. So we are in the presence of three very bright students today. Christy is a San Francisco Bay Area native, where she attended UC Berkeley and graduated in 2015 with honors in legal studies. And Christy will become the first lawyer in her family. Welcome, Christy.
Thanks.
So today I wanted to kind of talk with you to go through chronologically your path to each of your paths to where you are today and how you chose a law career. So really, I just wanted to step back first and ask the big picture question of all of you, which is, why did you want to become a lawyer? We'll start with you, Bonifacio.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So for me, my journey to becoming a lawyer really began with my interest in politics, government, and news. I really love learning about all kinds of different areas. And so growing up, I was a kid like reading Wikipedia all the time and learning things. And so I translated that passion and interest to majoring in political science as an undergrad. And there, I really realized that what I really enjoyed was the research and writing aspect of being a political science major, diving into different kinds of academic resources, crafting arguments, and then writing all that into an essay. And so I wanted to translate that interest into a career, and I realized that's what lawyers do. And so I decided to pursue becoming a lawyer.
Great, great. And how about you, Evelyn? Why did you want to become a lawyer?
I never thought I'd be a lawyer. Actually, my interest in advocacy started in the health and public health area, and I had a passion for working with communities in need who maybe didn't understand why there were high rates of diabetes or obesity in the community, and I really had a passion of helping those communities identify some barriers and providing access to empower them and reshape their lives and their understanding. And actually, I had a mentor, a really great mentor in my last job who introduced me to the concept of law school. And this was when I was living in DC. So like I said, I never thought about going to law school, and someone planted the seed in my head, and I'm really thankful for that. It turns out this was the career I've been working towards.
Great. And you, Christy, how about you?
Well, I think studying law is really the best way to understand what our society is about, how it runs, and what its rules are. So my family and I immigrated to the United States when I was really young, and in a lot of my formative years, it involves a lot of, I helped my parents navigate through this new world, and I learned a lot on my own. And so for me, being a lawyer means being able to expand my reach and provide legal help to those who may experience language barriers, those who can't really afford legal help, and others who are really most disenfranchised in our society.
Great. I mean, as the audience can see, all three of you have very different paths, but you both, I mean, all of you ended up in the same area. So, I mean, I think that's a big takeaway that you'll see throughout this conversation is just that there's very different ways to get to where they are at. And I did just want to remind the audience that if you do have questions along the way, feel free to type them into the private chat, and we're going to definitely try to answer as many as possible. So getting into your pre-law school backgrounds, really, what was your process for choosing which law school you went to? Evelyn, why don't we start with you?
Sure. My process was different based on, I think, the season of life I was in. I, grew up in Texas and then made a really big change and lived on the East Coast for about 6 years, which was a really good time to grow as an adult and learn more about myself and the communities around me. And when I was considering this transition into a different career, I was married, and my husband and I weren't really ready to settle in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region, which you'll hear as the DMV, which is not the place that you get your driver's license. But we weren't ready to really settle in the DMV, and we wanted to prioritize location. For me, education is important. I wanted to go to a solid school with a really good network because of my work experience taught me that it's really not about your grades. It's about the relationships that you build with people in your network and the work experience that you have. And so I was interested in moving to a place that upheld values of diversity, and a million other things out here on the West Coast and especially the Bay Area. So we really prioritized location and the place that I wanted to start my career. And honestly, everyone says that the West Coast is the best coast, so I'm here to find out.
So Christy, you are the only one of the three that is going to law school out of state. So why did you end up in Texas A&M?
Well, for me, choosing the law school was a very simple process. I knew I wanted to do intellectual property law, so I looked at all the schools that had the best IP programs. And for me, the next concern was financial stability. So I kind of went where the money was, and that's how I ended up in Texas. And what Evelyn said was super important, though. You really need to think about location, and that's one thing I didn't think about. I never thought I'd stay here in Texas. And when you go to law school, you build a network here, you build your connections, you find jobs here. And I think that you really have to consider where you want to practice, though. So if you want to practice in California, go to California school. If you want to practice in Texas, a Texas school is probably your best bet.
Great. So I wanted to get into more of your preparation for law school. What exactly did you do to prepare yourself to go to law school? Bonifacio?
Yeah, so I had quite an unusual track in getting into law school. I actually didn't decide that I wanted to go to law school until I was like entering my senior year of undergrad. because I was just hesitant to go to law school for the debt, for the uncertainty. But I think my path really involved me. No, like I always knew it was kind of in the back of my head that it's a possibility. And so I kept my options open. And so I made sure to pursue opportunities that positioned me well in the future that so I could go to law school. So as an undergrad, when I transferred to Berkeley, I already started cultivating relationships with professors that I really liked and enjoyed taking classes with, because I knew that I had to get a letter of recommendation from a couple professors before applying to law school. I took multiple classes with the same professor that I did well in, so I went to office hours a lot. I also started studying for the LSAT the summer after my junior year of undergrad, just so I could give myself enough time to apply. I determined when I wanted to start my first year of law school, and I kind of created a timeline for taking the LSAT, lining up my letters of recommendation. I also pursued classes that I really thought would be interesting and I would be passionate about, because I understand that attending law school requires a pretty competitive GPA. And so I wanted to take classes that I knew I would be really interested in, because that would translate into me doing well. So going to law school is quite a journey. It's a multi-year process. There's a lot of factors at play, and it takes a lot of time management and strategizing.
How do you feel about that, Evelyn? Did you have a similar path?
No, well, my path was a little different, but I do want to commend Bonifacio on how thoughtful you were in that process, and that's a fantastic route to take, especially if you're thinking about doing this, from undergrad. I think because I had been, I was working and I'd been out of school for about 5 or 6 years after grad school already. The idea of law school was new to me, and as soon as it was planted, the seed was planted, I kind of worked quickly to ask. I did a lot of informational interviews, basically. So I reached out to my friends, and I didn't have anyone in my family. I don't have anyone in my family who's a lawyer. So kudos to Christy being first generation there for sure. As well, I understand that. So I had to actually go to my fiance's family members who had gone through the process and asked, what made you go to law school? Do you think it's a wise decision now? What happens when you're transitioning out of a career into a new one? And so I asked questions. I did some research on my own and looked up kind of pros and cons, the cost. I was really concerned about the financial aspect of it. And then I also tried to understand really what you could do in law. I think my tunnel vision was that what you see in TV is that, you can only be a litigator. I'm still trying to figure out what litigation means. And it turns out you can do a lot of different things in the law, which I think is what really drew me to that aspect. So after doing the research and after talking to some folks, I quickly signed up for the LSAT and just went through the process of applying. I reached out to past mentors. The director of my MPH program wrote a recommendation letter for me. My mentor, who had a JD but was in public service as a government employee at the time, wrote a rec letter. And it was basically the year before I entered law school when I applied. So it was a really short time period of thinking about it, considering it, because for me it was, why not try? And not until we get the options for law school are we going to decide, should I go? So there's no harm in trying. And it wasn't the end all be all if I wasn't going to go, but I'm really thankful that I'm here now. So.
That segues really well into my next question, which was about mentors. Mm-hmm. So you told me that you had some informational interviews.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you tell me how you set those up and who they were with?
Absolutely.
Were they with lawyers?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. In terms of, someone else encouraged me to do an informational interview when I first moved to DC, and I was like, what does that mean? And they were basically like, you ask someone out to coffee and you just ask them how they got where they were and take the conversation where it goes and learn more about their own path, kind of like what everyone's doing now, learning about pathways. And so I actually started with the people I knew in my network. And then after I chatted with them, they would say, you know what, I think my aunt or a good friend of mine knows somebody who actually just got into law school. I can connect you if you want. And that's really how kind of, I like to call it networking light, because it's a little less intimidating than going to a networking event. It's just really getting to know people. And an informational interview is just sitting down with them and hearing their story. And, if it feels welcome, asking their advice. So what do you think I should do in my situation? Or what would you, what advice would you give? So it's really just getting as much information as you can from different people's walks of life and sitting with that information and figuring out what's right for you, in the moment as well.
Christy, you also are going to be the first in your family to be an attorney, so it doesn't sound like you necessarily have a lot of personal connections that are attorneys. Did you have a mentor before law school, or anyone that kind of pointed you in that direction?
Actually, I didn't have any mentors while I was an undergrad who told me to go to law school or anything like that. I kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So after undergrad, I worked in a law firm. And, with lawyers, the stories are always mixed. Don't become a lawyer, do become a lawyer. It's like the best thing in the world. And we know law school is not the best thing in the world anymore. But law school is, I networked a lot while I was working, and just hearing from the people who I worked with. I think that's the best way for me to really decide whether I wanted to go to law school. I see them working all the time, but some people don't work as much as others. And I think that everyone kind of has to do their own research, like Evelyn said. Like, is this a good path for you, or are you more suited for something else? And you kind of just have to do your own research in that regard.
Great. And I think you point out something that seems very obvious, but I don't think a lot of people necessarily think to take advantage of, which is, if you want to work in a specific field, you should definitely get a little experience, whether, even if you're working for free, even if you're just pushing paper, it's always going to be valuable, because you'll get to see what's going on and firsthand, and you'll be able to decide whether you like that environment or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually want to add to Evelyn's answer too. I think her answer is great, and I wish I had that foresight in undergrad. I think I'm the same way as Christy. I don't have any lawyers in my network or my family. And what I would advise now, having gone through law school and knowing what's available out there, a lot of you are probably going to college now or soon. Your college might have a law school. Go find the affinity groups in that law school that maybe interest you. I'm sure law students would be happy to talk to you about their journey to law school, and I'm sure they'd be giving you really good advice as well. So that's a resource that I looking back now, I think would be great. Like, if an undergrad asked me for advice now, I would definitely be open to doing it.
Sorry, to add on to what Bonifacio said, almost no one is going to say no if you want to ask me.
Yeah.
A law student, a lawyer, people are always trying to help you. So always feel free to reach out.
Right.
Yeah, I was super scared of networking as an undergrad, and now I know it's totally natural. It's fine. It's normal. You can reach out to people on a cold email, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah, and it really is true. I mean, I think is my experience. Basically, if someone is more experienced than you in something, they're very happy to share that experience with you, because I think they get something out of just sharing what troubles they went through going through that path. So I think I wanted to get into a little bit more of what it's actually like in law school. So Bonifacio, you actually just recently graduated, so you can talk about your final year of law school, but what was a typical week like for you?
Well, a typical week in law school really changes semester to semester, year to year. But I think the overarching theme is time management. So 1L year, your classes are chosen for you for the most part. So you can't really set your schedule, and you kind of just roll with it. And so what I would do my first year is I would try to get ahead of the assignments. You're given a syllabus of all the readings that you're going to be doing for the semester. And so on the weekends, I would try to do the readings for Monday and maybe even Tuesday if I'm really productive that weekend. I would generally just try to read 1 or 2 days in advance and just get ahead of it. Maybe about halfway through the semester, you start kind of consolidating what you've learned, maybe start reviewing notes and stuff like that. But also, in a typical week, I would leave myself time to socialize and meet people. I think in law school, it's been my favorite social network that I've ever been in, comparing it to work and undergrad. People come from all different walks of life. people are super motivated and very interesting and passionate about the things they're doing. So I definitely made enough time to like socialize and meet people, because I think that's also part of the value of law school.
Christy, you are a year behind Bonifacio. So what is your typical week like?
Pretty similar to Bonifacio. A lot of law school is reading, and people say it's a lot of reading, but it's really 10 to 30 pages, and it's just really dense material. So a lot of it is just reading, trying to understand what you're reading. So for me, I usually read on the weekends. So I'll read for the week ahead. I'll have my notes, and like a day before class, I'll review those notes. But if there's a lot going on in law school, throw some time in there to exercise. I throw in time to hang out with my friends, but you have to realize that when you're hanging out with your friends, you're actually just sitting next to each other and reading. So
yeah. Very true.
Time out to like go outside of the library.
Was there anything different in your experience, Evelyn?
It was actually very similar. I mean, I'm very slow at reading, and I would have to read. I still reread things quite a bit. It would take me, 20 minutes to get through 2 pages of a dense case saying, is this in English? Can I understand English? This is difficult, and so I did spend a lot of time on the weekends my first year as well, preparing for the week. And actually my first semester, I moved out to California before my husband did. So I was just on my own, which was pretty great actually, because I could just immerse into school. But I didn't realize how much you would be reading, and that it would be expected that you spend 2 to 3 times the amount of time preparing for a class for that class. So you have a 2-hour class on Monday. You probably spent 4 to 5 hours reading for that one class. And when you really think about that, time management is so important, and being balanced, what Christy said, throw in some time for working out, not to shamelessly plug my public health background, but mental health is important, emotional health is important, having a community is important. You can't just hole away by yourself, because you can't really just do it alone. So it's helpful to remember that, which I leaned on that a lot my first year, and I think that's how I was able to get through somewhat alive.
So I'm going to throw this next question open to everybody, but how did you think that law school was different than high school or college?
I can go ahead and answer that one first. I honestly thought high school was harder than college. I did an IB program, so an international baccalaureate program. So a lot of the classes were college level classes. And so that really prepared me for law school and college. So I think the biggest thing is that everyone has different experiences. Law school is just a lot of reading. You have to understand it's a lot more reading, it's a lot more studying. And so it's not, college and high school, it was a lot of memorization and reiteration. Law school is reading something, understanding it, and applying it to different facts. So you really need to understand that you have to put the work in.
I'll add to that. I think law school has a lot of independence that was different from my undergrad and my high school experience. I'll be honest, I loved high school. High school was so fun. And then I did not have fun in undergrad as a pre-med student, because science, some of it was great and some of it was really difficult. And I think there was a fear of failure, and also a lot of pressure of being first in family to go to college and not wanting to mess up. You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes. And I think if you aren't allowing yourself permission to try something for fear of failing, that's really what you have to be scared of. So I think in law school, no one's sitting over you telling you when things are due. I mean, when your exam is, and that's your 1 grade most of the time for the entire semester, that you study 3 to 4 months, accumulates to 1 test that you take, and that's your entire grade. And in order to prepare for that, it's kind of arbitrary. A lot of it has to be your diligence and your discipline, and finding purpose in what you're doing, whether or not someone else is telling you to do it. And that's very different. That's very different from, even my grad school experience with public health. I had milestones, and my grades were separated differently. So I think that's one of the biggest changes from undergrad.
Yeah, I think for me, two things come to mind. One is I think like law school is much more competitive than undergrad and high school. I'm come from a social science background, and so law school is the first time where we're graded on a curve. You know, like in undergrad, kind of like everyone can get like A's and B's, but in law school, only like 10% can get like the highest grade, and only the next 30% can get the next highest grade. And so that kind of really changes the culture and the work ethic that people have. And that was new to me. But I think by the time you get to law school, you'll have already encountered several, like, I wouldn't say high stakes, but competitive environments. So hopefully you'll be like mentally prepared for those kinds of challenges. And I think the other difference, I think, is that in law school, which is great, is that everyone is kind of more or less pursuing a similar thing. The passions and the interests and the personalities are a little more honed in. Everyone likes law, everyone likes news, everyone likes politics, which is like I mentioned earlier, I love talking about. And so it's really nice being part of that community. I really got to know different kinds of people. It really opened my mind in terms of people's viewpoints. And I think that's quite different from undergrad, where it's just much more open-ended and people are going off to do much more different things.
Right. So we're actually starting to have some listener questions come in. So the first question is whether your major contributed to your experience in law school. So I'm going to throw that one to Evelyn first, because hers is not necessarily a major that most people think directly leads to law school. So,
right,
Evelyn?
sure. I'm not even sure what I majored in. I started out as a biochemistry major pre-med, and then senior year, kind of like Bonifacio, I loved the social sciences, and I didn't listen to that voice all through undergrad. I thought I had to be a doctor, and therefore I must take biochemistry, which includes calculus too, by the way. And unless you like math, I don't recommend it. And so my medical humanities major was more about the philosophy and history and ethics behind health and healthcare. And I actually think that kind of arbitrary conversation, that type of degree actually really helps me in law school, because everything is, it's not about, the law really isn't black or white in most areas. It's just, you have to get really comfortable with the gray area. We live in a gray scale. So part of, the excitement of having classmates who have similar values to you or think differently than you, everyone has a really interesting take on the same problem. And that is something that I think I was able to cultivate a little bit with a social sciences background, but the physical sciences, being pre-med was rigorous. I took the MCAT twice. I've applied. So in terms of that, I actually thought the law school application was less rigorous than a medical school application. And I'm thankful that I had that experience, because it can be very intimidating. That's not to say that it's easy. It's hard. Do your work. It's okay. You should get support for it. But I think the essence of my science background helped me with some of the competitiveness that Bonifacio talks about in terms of how rigorous it is in law school.
Bonifacio, how about you? Because you're
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm like the exact opposite of Evelyn. Like if you could look at the typical Berkeley law student, it's a Berkeley undergrad, political science major from California. That's that's me. And so I did mention earlier though that my interest in research and writing as a poli-sci major developed my interest in going to law school. And I feel like that actually really helped me in law school, that skill set, because that's a lot of what you basically do as a lawyer, is you research and you write and you structure arguments, and the way you write things are very important, and you have to be persuasive. Mm-hmm. So that definitely influenced my experience in law school. I feel like there was less of a learning curve in that regard. I do know a couple friends who have a STEM background, who have PhDs in science, and who kind of struggled actually maybe in the first semester having to write so much. They're just used to having like bright line answers, yes or no kind of answers, and then they kind of struggle with that a little bit. So I think coming from a social science background and the skill sets you hone as an undergrad helped me in law school.
Great. So moving on to the next question, Christy, what have you found most rewarding about law school?
I think the most rewarding thing about law school is how much you can challenge yourself. A lot of it is really intellectually stimulating. You learn things that you've never known before. And the best thing for me is when I hear on the news someone saying something wrong and I'm just like, no, that's not right. I read something about that one time and now I know more about it. So I'll say it to myself. So, it feels good to me. So law school throws all this different kind of information at you, and you kind of have to navigate it yourself. The fact patterns are so different, and when you find that one fact pattern that fits what you studied that one time, it just feels really good. So you learn a lot in law school.
And Evelyn, what have you found most challenging about law school?
Most challenging about law school. I think I have been a proponent of staying in your lane. Like, everyone's got a different experience. Everyone's work process is different. I'm old school. I love to handwrite my notes, and I have like a bajillion highlighters, and I've been told I can't buy anymore. And you study differently. And some people like study groups, and other people want to study on their own. And it's easy to walk in and say, okay, I'm going to do this, my way, and not be distracted by all the other, static kind of white noise around me. But it's really hard not to get pulled into that, because you notice that a peer of yours who you respect and are friends with, they're starting to outline like way before you are. And should you be doing that? And oh my gosh, they're also, not only are they reading up on this and taking extra like classes on whatever, like, should you also be doing the same thing other people are doing in terms of your learning style? I think that has been the biggest challenge, is taking a step back, evaluating what you might want to include or start doing yourself, but also not assuming that just because everyone else is doing it that way, that it should also be the way that works for you. And it's tough because, like Christy and Bonifacio have already said, we're continuing to learn, and this is a new environment. It's really new for me as well. I didn't speak legalese either coming to law school. So I think, taking pause and reevaluating and asking yourself those hard questions of like, how do I define success? Like, what is it that I'm trying to get out of law school? Is it the big paycheck to pay for this really big loan debt why am I here? I think is really a challenge. Sometimes you can forget those questions that you should be asking yourself often to really keep you back on track. So that was a surprising challenge. I wasn't expected to be so swayed by all of the different, things going on around me, but it's hard not to be.
So Bonifacio, you are the most tenured of our three panelists. So I want to ask you the next question. What happens during your summers in law school?
So typically law students during their halfway through first year will look for a summer job. Everyone gets a summer job. Everyone does a summer job. And so for me, my both summers, I worked at a large law firm. The first one, I worked at Reed Smith in San Francisco. Typically, these summers are like about 10 weeks long. Mine, I did 7 weeks at a law firm, and then I did a 3-week secondment at a company, and I worked at their legal department. So I can get a different perspective on what lawyers do once they start working inside a company instead of a law firm. And then my second summer, I worked at a different law firm, this time in Palo Alto, which is pretty much a similar experience. You're just doing different kinds of assignments from attorneys. You're writing memos and helping them research, and then you kind of discuss and the case and just try to generally help out the junior attorneys.
How did you go about finding those jobs in the summer?
So for the first summer job, it's a little more unstructured. You kind of just, Evelyn alluded to this earlier, this kind of track that everyone goes on, by late first semester, 1L year, you start hearing people like, starting to apply for jobs. You start hearing about applications opening. And so there's resources that the law school has. There's a career services office. They can give you ideas of which law firms are hiring, which positions are opening. You kind of discuss the pursuit you have, and they try to match you with that interest. But for the second summer, it's more structured. At Berkeley, we have this thing called on-campus interviews, where all the like law firms come for like a 1-week period and do just like a round robin of interviews based on your application, and then you kind of just go back for a callback interview with a law firm, and that happens at the end of the first summer of law school.
Did you have similar experiences with that, Christy and Evelyn?
It's a little bit different in Texas, just because in Texas our school semester is a little bit shorter than the other schools, and what we do is we have 2 jobs for the summer. So you split your summer with one firm or another firm the second part of the summer. And so I think what Texas does it so that we get exposure to a lot of different types of fields that one summer. It gives us more things to really experience. But I know California firms, they like to have one student for the whole summer as opposed to 2.
Yeah, I would say that's in terms of Bonifacio's experience, it was similar to mine. I participated in the Public Interest Public Service Day for my first summer job, but then I ended up actually applying through the American Bar Association's Judicial Internship Opportunity Program and externed with a district judge out here last summer. But one of the most surprising things to me that was also challenging was this on-campus interview process that I thought, okay, I'll apply because I don't want to not apply. But applying for next summer's job during your current summer's job was wild. I had never experienced that even on my other job searches in the past. I was still struggling to figure out what I was doing this summer. And was in the process of interviewing for next year, with potential, because they're most medium-sized or big law firms, they're looking to hire you for next year with the potential of hiring after the fact. So that actually that was really true experience of the pressure and the competitiveness that can come with law school, but that's also not the only experience you can have, especially with if you're looking into, public interest, Bay Area legal aid jobs, those are also out there and of high interest. It's just a different process. No matter what, everyone around you hustles though. And in that regard, you should be working really hard to find those experiences because experience that we're all working to become excellent advocates, and you can only do that if you have work experience. So that was, OCI is wild. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Evelyn, so you had a little bit different experience than Christy and Bonifacio in that you externed with a judge. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that is and what that was like?
Sure. I will share that no one could understand why we were called externs instead of interns. So essentially you're still working, for the summer, and a lot of people will want to be law clerks after they graduate. So if you're externing or interning, that basically means you're like, if you watch The Office, you're like the assistant to the law clerk, assistant to the office manager. So I had one other peer who was another extern for the same judge, and we supported the law clerks who supported the judge by doing a lot of researching and a lot of writing. And so the work experience was different than what I typically have experienced before in offices, because it really was just contained to the environment of that judge and who worked with her. We would have weekly meetings and we would learn about the cases on the docket. We would get our assignments, and then we would be released. And actually, where I worked, I was on a different floor than the judge's chambers. And so I was actually in a room, it was like intern alley. And there were like 5 of us interns there with our computers. And from 9 to 5, you kind of independently did your research. And if you have to really be willing to ask questions, the fear of like sounding dumb or asking the wrong question, you just knock that out of your mind. Just ask your question. People want to help you. And if you're wasting like 5 hours trying to figure out if you're doing it right, when you could just go upstairs, knock on the door and say, can I get a little bit more help on this? Like, am I thinking of this question in the right direction? they would much rather you do that and get you back in the right direction so that you can really research effectively. But I say that only because I look back and I kind of wish I did that more. I was terrified of asking the wrong question or being really dumb in front of people who, unlike me, had a lot of experience in the law, or had family members who were lawyers. And so they already kind of walked into law school with that experience in mind, while I was Googling things like, what is a litigator? So I think finding your network and finding people who are willing to, where you feel welcome to ask those questions is important, but also taking a deep breath and stepping up and giving someone else the chance to help you by asking is also important. So that was not a direct answer to your question, Stephen, but thank you for asking. Lots of research, lots of writing when you're working for a judge.
Yeah, I also want to add too, I also externed for a federal judge, but during the school year. So that's an opportunity in law school that's available. Yeah. You can extern for a judge or for a prosecutor's office or for a public defender's office or any other institution during the semester for credit. So I just want to put that out there. And I also definitely recommend working for a judge and going behind the scenes and seeing how it's all made.
Right. We are actually getting another listener question about the costs of law school. So I actually wanted to direct this one to Bonifacio because he went to in-state public school. What exactly was the cost for law school and how did you navigate that?
I'll be frank, law school is expensive, especially if you're going in the Bay Area, because you have to factor in living costs as well. For me, especially someone who grew up in a low-income household, don't know any lawyers, taking on six-figure debt was terrifying. And I mentioned this earlier, how I didn't even want to go to law school initially because of that fear. So for me, my strategy was, well, first of all, I benefited from having a bit of the GI Bill left as a veteran, so that paid for some of my law school, but it was still quite expensive after that. It was still, my debt is going to be in the six figures. And so my strategy was just to find the law school that would provide as many opportunities for me as possible, especially one that is competitive in placing me at a law firm that pays well, because I'm going to be having to pay off that debt for the next couple of years. And so I strategized and I tried to find the law school that would open up more opportunities for me, and then taking that opportunity to earn a paycheck that can pay off those loans.
So Christy, how about you? Since you go to an out-of-state school, what are the costs like?
Yeah, my advice is to apply to as many schools as possible. If you're a diverse candidate, apply to the schools where you're going to be diverse. Mm-hmm. In the Bay Area, I'm definitely not diverse, but in Texas, I may be the only Asian in my class, and it's like a class of 100 people. So make sure to apply to different places. But one thing that people don't really know is that scholarships are everywhere, and a lot of times people don't really think about it while they're in school. But that's one of the best ways to find scholarships. I have a friend who applies only during the school year, and she gets a lot of those scholarships because people aren't applying. So look for scholarships. They're always out there. Your local associations will have scholarships as well.
Did you find that your Asian American background helped you with scholarships, or just with, like you said, schools that don't necessarily have as diverse student body as the Bay Area normally does?
Yes, for sure. At Texas A&M University, my first year, they've become a lot more diverse since, but my first year, I was the diversity. So they named a bunch of different things, and they were all me. We have someone from California. We have someone that's an immigrant. The whole list, that was just me, but it's getting a lot better. It's very different here, but.
Yeah. But does that help with the costs?
Yes, that 100% helps with the cost. That's why I chose Texas A&M, just because of the scholarship money. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'll find once you apply to law school and you have competing offers from different law schools, they start throwing you like money so you can go to their law school. Mm-hmm. So when you're applying to law school, be prepared to negotiate your financial aid package. There's resources online for you to look up on how to do this, when to do this. And these resources will also show you which law schools will be offering you money based on your application, based on your LSAT score, based on your GPA. and that's very important to do up front. One thing I failed to do when I was applying to law school was set myself up for that kind of success where I could negotiate successfully. And so I wasn't really able to get like a discount on my law school tuition going in. And that's something I wish I had done. So definitely do your research about financial aid, what kind of money schools give to applicants, and how to negotiate those once you get an offer.
Yeah, and I echo what both Christy and Bonifacio said. I only wanted to go to a school that gave some semblance of a scholarship. There are scholarships, there are also grants, obviously. Some of us are taking out loans. I'm still paying my loan from undergrad. Thankfully, I didn't have to pay for my graduate experience. Which is another reason why I stayed at Baylor, because, hey, I can't turn down, a full scholarship. But law school was not the same. And for the first year out here, I was actually also an out-of-state student. So that was much more expensive. I was, a DC resident. So you can't really become in-state until you do like a full year and you use all of your documentation. But I think one thing that Bonifacio mentioned that I wish I had done, even though I had received some scholarship, was actually do a little bit more to leverage or ask. Once again, asking the question, is there another scholarship out there? I have often felt like I can't ask for more if I have received something. And I don't know if that is, well, that's a whole other conversation as to why, maybe women don't negotiate as much, and we're trying to work on that. But learning how to negotiate or asking questions or asking someone for help to figure out how you can better navigate that, money can be is very emotional and scary for a lot of people. And, I couldn't really afford going to college in the first place. So I think that kind of scarred me a little bit with the way in which I looked at other opportunities. But there are opportunities out there, and there are foundations and organizations that want to help you get there. So yes, financials, and how to navigate law school and the loans, that's important, but that shouldn't be the number one barrier from keeping you from trying. So definitely scholarships, definitely grants. And, speaking to what Christy said, there are programs out there that are specific to, bringing in students of color and students impacted by low income. And I think that if you search, you'll find that those exist, and they usually have financial aid attached to it.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just
I was gonna. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just to add on one more thing, when I got my acceptances, I reached out to every single school and asked them, can I have more? So I got responses for about 50 to 60%. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to every single school and saying, here are my offers. Can you give me a little bit more?
That's awesome. I wish I knew you, Christy, when we were applying. I could have used some of that advice.
and adding to that, it's like, what is a scholarship and why do schools give you scholarships? For schools, their incentive is to have students with competitive GPAs and competitive LSAT scores. And this could mean having a 1 point higher LSAT score or a several point higher LSAT score could literally shave off tens of thousands of dollars of debt off of your total debt load. So when you're grinding away at the LSAT and when you're grinding away for every semester in undergrad and trying to get a high GPA, just think those numbers can translate into huge savings for you and could mean a difference between going to law school with a small loan, a manageable loan, or having to pay full price. So when you're having those difficulties and really asking yourself, why am I spending Saturday mornings doing an LSAT practice exam, it's all because of you're creating leverage for yourself so you can negotiate a better scholarship when you do apply.
Right. And something that all three of you said actually reminded me of my own experience, which was I had applied to a school that I had basically no intention of ever going to, and they had actually offered me a scholarship. And instead of responding right away with a rejection or saying that I wasn't going to attend, I just left it open, and then eventually they upped the amount of the scholarship just by my waiting and not doing anything. So I would just say that's a little bit of a pro tip, which is that if you apply to a school, you don't have to answer necessarily right away whether you want to accept or reject their offer to let you come there. Because in my case, it ended up being, I guess, a financial plus for me to not even have responded. So I did kind of just want to go back to a little bit of the big picture, since we only have about 15 minutes left. So being that this is the Pathways program and you're all of Asian American background, I just want to open this up to everybody here. How has being an Asian American affected your law career so far, or has it even been a factor?
I guess I'll go. I'll try to keep it short. I think it's the reason why I'm now here. This mentor that I keep speaking about, I actually met at my last job prior to law school, and I was working for a nonprofit, directing a program that was all about advocating for more Asian Americans in public service, which is an area where Asian Americans are typically underrepresented and if they are represented, they're not holding leadership positions. And so, the conversation around representation and leadership and diversity and education and access was just swirling around me for several years. And not that, anyone wants to play into the model minority myth of Asians being doctors, lawyers, or engineers, but I really looked back at growing up with a single mother who is a small business owner, who speaks great English, but I often had to translate, things to her growing up and helping her with non-kid duties. And I think back about how, man, I think we could have really used some help if we even knew that help was out there. I could have really benefited from someone kind of sitting down with me and explaining what this, what the law meant and why that was impacting her business, which was our livelihood. And so in terms of, how being Asian American has impacted my experience or why, I think that's really just simply why I'm in law school now. That's personal experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it's very similar to Evelyn's experience. When I came into law school, there was this huge study that came out. You might have all heard of it, by Justice Goodwin Liu from Yale Law School, who said that Asian Americans are underrepresented in public service, in government positions, and in high leadership positions in the law. And so that really framed my perception of the legal profession going into law school. And that encouraged me to pursue certain kinds of opportunities and pursue certain kinds of skill sets so I could help, at least do my part in correcting that deficit. But to just give a very clear example of what the law means for me as an Asian American person, especially as a Filipino American person, when the coronavirus hit and the jobs numbers started being released and you started seeing unemployment in the tens of millions, I immediately was able to go to the Filipino Bar Association and sign up and help provide legal services to displaced Filipino, not even just Filipino American workers, because the clinic was open to just basically any displaced worker, and help them figure out if they're eligible for unemployment benefits, help them figure out what they're entitled to if they've been wrongfully terminated, help them figure out what the privileges and rights they have as a worker. And being able to respond to that quickly because I knew I had the legal training, I had the network, I knew who to call, I knew I've done clinics before that were similar to this. And I could just immediately respond to an emergency situation like that and help make a difference in people's lives. I think, and for that to happen now as a 3L at the end of law school, really highlighted to me what it means to be an Asian American lawyer. It's having a skill set that can really help make a difference in people's lives in our community.
I mean, just echoing that, I am a minority here, and as an Asian American, I was exposed to so many different things in this area. I was encouraged to join the minority bar associations, and the Asian American attorneys that I've met have made it really a mission to help me. When you have that kind of support system, it opens up so many more opportunities. I had access to an entire network of mentors who kind of been able to guide me every step of my way in law school, and they're here to help me for any future concerns that I have. They help me navigate which path I want to take. So it's, for me, being an Asian American person, just being an Asian American is just positively impacted my law career so far.
I mean, following up on what you were saying about the demographic of your school, Christy, do you find yourself having to be a spokesperson for Asian American issues, or just kind of having to educate others about what your background is like?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's 2020, and I've had people ask me where I'm actually, where are you really from? And I'm just like, California? But where are you really from? San Jose. And they're just so confused. I mean, it's here today. I mean, racism is rampant. It's an insane time right now for everyone. And as an Asian American, I think we have to step up and really help those around us understand what it is, what it's like to be not only Asian American, but just see color and appreciate color.
We actually have another listener question that I wanted to get to, which was, which again, I'll just throw it out to all of you. How's law school confirmed for you or convinced you to pursue any specific law career?
Law school has really exposed me to a lot of different areas of law. Before I went to law school, I worked in corporate immigration. So when I was going to law school, I thought I would work in that area. And with law school, they offer so many opportunities with OCIs and just internships that now I'm actually working in food and alcohol law and real estate law. So for me, it just confirms that this is the right profession, just because even if I'm not interested in one area, there's so many other different things that I can go into. And again, free food every day, that's always a plus.
Yeah,
I think for me,
oh, go ahead, Bon.
I was going to say, I think for me, coming into law school, I knew I wanted to be a litigator, but I think my experiences in law school confirmed that I want to be a trial lawyer specifically. Having done like mock trial, moot court, appellate advocacy, situations where you're before a panel of judges and you're being asked questions and you're trying to be persuasive and you're trying to advocate for a client or for a certain position. It's very thrilling for me, and just being able to have those opportunities really confirmed my desire to become a litigator.
That's awesome, Bonifacio. Can you explain to me what a litigator is, like after the call?
Yeah, I'll
Still learning. Actually, I would say that before I entered law school, I knew that it would not confirm a specific path, because I thought going into undergrad that the path for me was healthcare. And then I pursued it with, an MPH, which I love public health, but that's the proactive. Public health is the opposite side of healthcare, which is reactive. So going into law school, people asked, well, are you going to do the global health law concentration, which Hastings has, and it's really awesome. I've taken classes in it, but I actually decided to say no, because when you start doing that tunnel vision and assuming that, oh, I stepped on this path and I have to stay, that actually keeps these opportunities and these doors closed. What Bonifacio and Christy have already mentioned, there are a lot of things out there that are of interest. And actually, I think law school is great because you're allowed to be interested in multiple things. And putting it succinctly, just echoing Christy, it is the right profession, because if you are there to advocate and support a community, you will learn the skills in order to do that. And it's not just about the topic area for which you're doing that. And I think that's really important to remember. Only if you walk in and you go, oh my gosh, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, that's okay. If you're like Bonifacio, which is awesome, and you want to be a litigator in a trial, then go that route. But it's also okay if you don't know right away, so long as you are purposeful about learning as much as you can and trying those things out.
And a lot of students, they try to take bar classes, which are the courses that are tested on the bar. I definitely recommend taking the classes that you're interested in. If I want to take sports law, then I'll take sports law. It doesn't matter that it's not going to be on the bar. These are classes that really open me up to experiences, because your professors are people who are really knowledgeable in that area, and they know other people who work in the area. And that just is another avenue for you to maybe find a job, find a mentor.
Absolutely. And not only following the topic that interests you, but I've been starting to select my classes based off of the professors that I want to learn from. You know, the ones who have like the great reputation, who law school isn't really about teaching you how to read things. It's teaching you how to ask questions, and that's difficult. You know, it's like, where do you even start? So surrounding yourself with these professors and mentors who model, you know, the kind of profession that you're interested in, or just kind of the person that you look up to, is another great way to learn, you know, that content area.
And I think, speaking personally, just to kind of echo and say what Christy, Evelyn, and Bonifacio have said, but just in a different way, is just that for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I entered law school. I just knew that I had a general idea that I wanted to help others. So I think it's really important for people considering law school to consider just what are base skills that lawyers do. They help each other, or they help others. Like Bonifacio said, they can be trial advocates. But just the fact that I knew that I wanted to help others, eventually I did what Christy said, which was just take a bunch of different classes. And then eventually by the third year, I figured out something that I did want to do. So we're just about wrapping up right now. So I just wanted to, again, give it to all of you guys to, you know, do you guys have any final advice for our audience?
We've been talking at you quite a bit, and thank you all for the questions. I guess one last thing is just make sure to try and surround yourself with people who challenge you, and seek to understand if there's turmoil around you, or if there's something that doesn't sit right with you. Before getting on the defensive, which is human nature, seek to understand really what's going on behind that, and come up with, you know, productive ways that you can take action, whether that's about how you want to pursue your career, or, you know, raising and elevating voices around you that are systemically unheard, whatever that means. You know, find those people who are there to challenge and support you. And it's okay to question, you know, what you think is right.
I know a lot of you guys are about to take the LSAT or want to take the LSAT. I struggled a lot with the LSAT, and I took it way too many times. So for me, it was a little bit harder to learn on my own, and I eventually needed to get a tutor. So if you are struggling, don't feel like you have to do it on your own. There are people who even do it for free. So getting a tutor was the best decision that I ever made, and I think that definitely helped me into law school.
My advice, looking back at my time in law school, absolutely loved it. It's clear that the law is just how we decide to organize things, how we want to incentivize behavior, how we want to punish certain behavior. And for me, that's a very meaningful pursuit, because that affects all areas of our lives. And it creates, being a lawyer and going to law school exposes you to so many ideas, to so many opportunities. And it's definitely been worthwhile. I love that this decision that I made. And my advice is a couple of things. One is to ask for help, like what Evelyn said. Whether you're an undergrad or a high schooler, there's going to be people around you who are going to be willing to help, and don't be afraid to ask. The other thing is to manage your time and, you know, create a strategy for yourself, create a timeline of when you want to do things. Because applying to law school is a multi-year effort. There's a lot of things going on. So plan ahead and try to foresee the things that you're going to need to accomplish in order to get to the second goal after that. And then finally is to think of the reward at the end. I just mentioned to you what law school has meant to me and the kinds of opportunities that I've really enjoyed. So just think about that when you're challenged, and realize that there is an end goal. People have done it, and you could do it too.
Great. So we're just about up out of time. So I just wanted to thank you guys again for providing your insights. And I wanted to thank our audience again for joining us. We hope you enjoyed hearing what they had to say. And with that, I'll throw it back to Pam.
All right, thank you, Stephen, and thank you to our panel for your wonderful insight. And to everyone, we hope you enjoyed today's panel. All 4 sessions have been recorded and will be posted on our website, aba-bay.com/pathways. The Asian American Bar Association is an organization that supports law students and attorneys of all levels. We have 20 committees that range from civil rights to in-house counsel to the Law Student Committee. In addition to the Pathways Conference, Our Community Services Committee typically holds several volunteer events each month, such as volunteering at a food bank, doing an environmental cleanup, making holiday cards for Meals on Wheels, and holding pro bono legal clinics for low-income members of the API community. AABA also offers scholarships and grants to law students twice a year. If you decide to pursue a law degree, we hope you'll consider joining us. And this concludes our 2020 Pathways to Law Conference. Thank you for tuning in.